I've been told that we have the smartest minds on the planet in this room, so usually in this sort of an audience, I start off with a disclaimer, and the story goes like this. Einstein, when he had just published his theory of relativity, he was touring all over Europe, talking about E equals mc squared, and wherever he went, his driver would go with him. And so after a few months, his driver got tired of sitting in the audience. It's like, Professor, why don't you let me be Einstein? You go sit in the audience, let me be Einstein, I'll go talk to them, and I'll give the speech. So sure enough, the next time Einstein has to go talk at this university, the driver goes up, he's speaking there, he gives a wonderful speech, goes up really well, and then comes the Q&A. And even that goes really well until this eccentric scientist gets up and asks this question that no one has ever heard before, and certainly the driver had never heard before. And so he did something brilliant. He looked at him straight in the eye and said, "Sir, the answer to your question is so simple, even my driver can answer that," and pointed to Einstein sitting in the audience. So with that disclaimer, I'm going to talk about all the stuff that we're doing in AI. I joined about 4 months ago, but I've been using KDB Plus for the last 20 years. Used to be at UBS in EFX, HFT. Then I was also a customer for many years for KX, also an SI. So I want to kind of set some background on where does KX come from, what is the pedigree, right? It started in 1957. Ken Everson, Harvard, he publishes this paper called Notation as a Tool of Thought. And that gives rise to APL, this new programming language. 1962, 1965, IBM ships with APL as the first programming language on the desktop, IBM System 360, APL reference manual, 79, 1980, IP Sharp. Ken Everson, Arthur Whitney gets together, and then that starts off a wonderful partnership, in Morgan Stanley, 1988, 1992, K, and then finally in 1998, 2003 onwards, KDB Plus and Q, Arthur. So there's three things that's very key here. One is reliability. It sometimes gets overlooked because we're talking about high-frequency trading, we're talking about algo trading, but reliability is one of the main key tenets of KDB Plus, right? 30 plus years of doing HFT, algo, quant stuff. Performance, that's a given, petabyte scale. It's 10 years ago, 12 years ago, the hedge funds were already doing petabyte scale. Today we have clients doing 800 billion records per day in KDB, which is going to go up to 1.6 trillion records per day. That's the scale at which we operate. And then accuracy, which is a given, you have, like I said, the best minds trying this thing out for quantitative analytics. Every single day, trillions of dollars are analyzed over KDB. Now, about a few months ago, Ashok and the ELT team, Mike, Peter, Martin, everybody got together, Clint, and said we need to be serious about AI. So there was a sizable investment made to create 4 main missions. So firstly, enterprise productivity. Where can we use AI to augment our operations? Second, partnerships. How can we enable our partners? Accenture, Capgemini, Infosys, if your partners, already working in an organization, can we enable them so that it has a multiplier effect? Customer innovation and MVP solutions. So we've been doing quite a few MVPs, which is essentially the concept of fail fast, like move on. We build sort of the, fundamental baseline use case, and then if that picks up, then you build further on it. And finally, AI sales solutions architects to supplement the sales efforts. There's going to be a few products that I'm going to talk about. KDB.AI, we already know that's a vector database. KDB-X dual mode, MCP server, Agentic AI, GPU acceleration, PyKX, and so on. But I don't want to get into them right now, but let me, I have 3 separate sections in which I'm going to first talk about KDB-X dual mode. So what is the main difference? What is dual mode? I've had some questions like, okay, why, like you can use some other vector database and KDB and still have that dual mode, which is, in theory, yes, you could, but there's something very specific about KDB that kind of sets it apart. Second is the MCP server, right? How can we democratize access? No more dealing with rank and type errors. I don't know how many hours we have spent, just dealing with this backtick type. What happened? You don't know. You're looking at the code, like spending hours trying to figure this thing out. And then KDB-X Agentic AI. What are some real-world use cases, which is which kind of goes beyond the conversational aspect of Gen AI, right? So the conversational aspect we already know. You can load your data, you can load your research reports and so on, but can we go beyond that? Is there a place for alpha within the agentic AI world as far as KX is concerned? So firstly, KX dual mode examples. So given a question like, summarize the impact of recent US EV tariffs on Tesla's performance using earnings calls, filings, and market data compared to BYD and Rivian. Before Gen AI, when you have a question like this, you're reviewing client holdings, preferences, CRM, research new trade policies. There's a significant manual process involved in order to get the right answer. So it could take essentially hours. With dual mode, with Gen AI combined with RAG, we can significantly shorten the time frame. Now that's AI Research Assistant, but then there are many other use cases, personalized portfolio, relationship managers, and so on and so forth. But let's delve a bit deeper into the first one, which is the AI Research Assistants, so dual mode. Given a question like, so summarize the impact of recent US EV tariffs on Tesla's performance using earnings calls, filings, market data compared to BYD and Rivian. So given a question like this, let's say if you have your news data, trade commentaries, and all that in your vector database, and your market data, your tick data in KDB, you have to join this data across two separate systems. So first, query the news database, find the time range. When were EV tariffs announced? Let's say between 9 and 10 a.m. Extract the timestamp, translate to the market DB timestamp, and look up Tesla's performance. Go back to the vector DB, extract earnings, filings using timestamp ranges, connect back to the vector DB to find to extract earnings, filings, etc. for BYD, Rivian, and so on. So there's a lot of kind of back and forth happening here between the vector DB, recent EV tariffs, extracting timestamp, going to the tick database, returning to the vector database, coming back to the tick database, going back to the vector database. So during the interrogation process that happens within the LLM, the content reasoning, the content generation, that orchestration that happens, you have a lot of back and forth, and timestamps are very tricky, right? In KDB, you have you can time.minute, time.second, or you go to milliseconds, microseconds, and they also talk about nanoseconds. But taking that timestamp from the vector DB, moving onto a tick DB can be slightly problematic. So what happens in dual mode is that in the same KDB session, from a technical aspect, right, you can have both the market data and the news data residing in the same session. So we have very high performance, ultra low latency tick database and a very high performance, ultra low latency news database co-located in the same system. What that means is now if we need to do an as-of join, which is like what many of us live on, then you could just extract that timestamp using tools, immediately connect to the market, the EFX table, the equities table, do an AJ, extract, how much did the price move for Tesla, or anything, do the EFX table, what was the movement of, dollar in terms of pips and so on. So structured and unstructured data in the same KDB plus session, automated parallel execution of queries, no timestamp costing, and no loss of data, no dependency, LLM MCP communications, right? So it makes things very, very, very simple. You're already dealing with a tough programming language. Can we make our lives easier? And MCP helps us do that. So we have been working with some of our partners to build, I know you've heard a lot of theory, but what does it look like in practice? So this is a solution that we have built recently. It's sort of an MVP solution, and the idea here is that I'm going to ask a question, and given a question, can I connect to the vector DB, KDB.AI, or KDB-X in dual mode, and the market data, and synthesize an answer, right? So, okay. It's called the AI Research Assistant with KDB.AI. So given a question, what drove revenue change as of fiscal year 2020 for AMD? You can see the Agentic AI in motion, right? So it's firstly, it's optimizing the query. It's extracting the key symbols. It's extracting the time ranges. It's extracting what kind of filings do I need to query. Then it does the RAG, right? So it pulls out the relevant chunks of text from the vector DB and sends it off to the LLM for to produce the answer. So you get the results back, but then you can do a deeper dive because you have everything co-located in the same system. Now you can look at the price movements. You can ask follow-up questions as well, right? So you can ask another question like, how much is the revenue for AMD? Just some general random question, if you will. And then that triggers the Agentic AI workflow all again. The good thing is that it maintains memory, it maintains context. So you have a natural flow, that happens as a result, right? So there's a lot happening behind the scenes. This is actually going against 10 million chunks of SEC filings, and it's all happening in real time. This is not like a fast forward of anything. This is happening in real time, and you get the answers back. Again, very, very informative, very useful. And then you can also, like I said, supplement that with something like a quant workspace. So company overviews, news, analyst ratings, earnings estimates. And you can do much more than that, right? So you can look at indicators like technicals, EMAs, SMAs, MACD. So basically, there's a huge potential here. And the good thing is also, these are grounded, by which I mean, you do get citation. So you can look, Ashok was talking about explainable AI, right? So you can, given a question, given the response, there are citations back to the original data sources, so you can cross-check. KDB-X, the dual mode example that I just showed, that's available for download. There's a GA coming up very soon. So this capability will be available in a couple of weeks' time. It's already there, so you can already download the trial version. So next is KDB-X MCP server. The idea of KDB-X MCP server is to democratize KX across the organization. So, if you're in the KDB Plus world and you're IT, you're doing all the tech stuff, you're familiar with this flow, right? So the front office asks a question, you have those questions that come to you, query the KDB Plus tables, send the results back to the trading desk, and then they may have more questions and it comes back to you, you query KDB again, and it goes round and round like that in circles sometimes. And finally, what ends up happening is that only experienced KDB Plus developers can query the data. IT dependency can add hours, multiple iterations, external resource dependency, lacking direct integration with BI tools, limited no governance, oversight, and so on. So this is something that we're quite accustomed to. What the MCP server does is that it replaces that middle portion. So you may have 5 people in the organization who are KX experts, expert KDB Plus developers, but there's 40 other people on the floor who needs access to that data. So can you empower them, can you enable them to ask the questions from your KDB Plus tables in a natural language, just like I showed before, right? So everyone can query KDB, immediate responses, conversational design, MCP server integration, so you can connect with BI tools, and you can also add guardrails. So this is a live demo. This is connecting to one of the MCP servers. So these are kind of blurry, but essentially these are tools that have been defined in the KDB Plus MCP server. So given a question like, what tables are there in KDB, it connects via IPC to the KDB Plus host and port and looks up what tables are there and produces the results. So there's an EFX table, there's an equities table, and it produces the results, right? So no interaction, the LLM is creating the query for you. What was the monthly spread of cable between 2020 and 2024? Generates the ANSI SQL query, uses s.k, the ANSI SQL interpreter, in order to produce the results again. But then, this is fine, but it's LLM, it's AI, so we can make it a bit more, fancy. So you can ask something like, can you just prepare a PDF report? Yeah, so, why just settle with those, with those responses? there's two things that happen here, which is interesting. So you see, you have OHLC, so close, and close is a reserved keyword, and hence that query is going to fail because it's, you do closed database, and because we're using the ANSI SQL. So what the LLM did was, let me look up the KDB plus ANSI SQL guidance, and it says, it looks like I need to code the column names because there's a reserved keyword. It creates a new query, gets the results, and then it's off to the races. Yeah, it's producing the entire PDF report about what happened with cable, and it's fast. Like and because I asked between 2019 and 2020, two things happened: COVID happened and Brexit. So this is the result you get, right? Like it's just magic. And you have a report about GBP USD 2019, 2020. What was the highest rate? What was the lowest rate? Like almost 2,000 pips. That's huge. 1 pip is $100. So key observation: GBP USD showed resilience, etc., etc. So as you can see, it's very powerful. The MCP server is already available. It's a free download from GitHub. And one of the things that I should mention here is that you need, it's all very mechanical, right? Like we need to add tools. So every firm has their own custom analytics. There are different folders in this MCP repository. Like you have prompts, resources, and so on, and tools. And there's a file called template.py. And if you just look up template.py, it's very, very intuitive. You can directly incorporate your KDB plus functions, your Q code in that, and when given a question, it's going to execute that code and produce the results. So how does the LLM know, like what queries to run? Comments. So we would add comments. So this is to check counterparty risk or something. This is to do TCA. So the LLM reads the comments in your Q functions and decides what functions to run. And now KDB Plus and Agentic AI. So Agentic AI is what we've been all talking about. Now KX is well known in the pre-trade, trade, mainly pre-trade, post-trade, and risk and compliance world, right? So this is stuff that we have been already doing for years now. Exploratory analysis, as of joins, back testing, pre-trade analytics, real-time signals, and so on. So there are use cases. There's an application of KDB in this different trade in the trade life cycle. But there are also analogous AI or machine learning use cases that are equally applicable across this trade life cycle. So pre-trade AI research assistant, strategy miner. So given different strats, can I supplement that with the news that came in today to surface insights to the sales desk in the morning? GPU feature engineering and backtesting, agentic AI research. At the trade level, it's not that well. We've not been that well known for for use of KDB at the trade level, but now we can. AI trading agents. So we can think of it as like you have a bullish, bearish, fundamentals, technicals. So you have a market shock, and you have these agents with an orchestrator, having a multi-directional communication to say, okay, how is the market going to move? I mean, the idea here is that it's going to surface some ideas, and the ideas could be potentially useful. At the post-trade level, GPU accelerated TCA explainer, AI PNL decomposition, and risk and compliance intraday bar stress testing, and so on. So these are all like AI, machine learning use cases that are equally applicable in these different during the trade life cycle, and this is a place where KDB Plus has a significant role to play. So one of the thoughts we had was, there are lots of products today in the market that can be thought of as conversational, agents, right? So you're doing content understanding, content generation. Is there a place for alpha? And there are certain use cases that we have been considering, for example, the AI strategy miner. So like I said, given different strategies, news, etc., that comes in, how can I synthesize that to produce some insights? AI trading agents, TCA explainer, what was the market impact? What was the POV, the dynamic tilt factors, VWAP, TWAP, so this is all information you can feed into the TCA agents and get an explanation of what happened. And policy and compliance is quite, very intuitive. The NVIDIA KX AI Banker, so all the stuff that I showed, these are solutions that have been built off NVIDIA GPUs. In fact, the AI research assistant that's running in our WWT NVIDIA labs, that's completely on premises. Yes, feel free to use GPT, Claude, and so on. But for HFT, for Algo, the reason we have this whole architecture is that you can run all of them on a Llama 3.2 model. This entire thing, can be installed, can be located in Equinix, LD4, NY4, wheresoever, right? So it can be self-contained without data going out to the web. And similarly, there are other reference architectures, right? So you can do this on AWS, you can do it in other places as well. Now, we've been hearing a lot about agentic AI and so on, and there are certain key tenets that we are following. Like, AI has become so common. It's like everybody's become an AI expert now. But there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to actually make it work, right? And there's certain key principles that we're following: quality control, explainable AI, protection, and then how do we evaluate that, right? Disciplined value capture, trust-first baseline, embedded risk management. So some core tenets on which we are doing all our AI work so that it's reliable and it's something that we can roll out to the market. So, sometimes when I give this talk, sometimes I speak too fast. I know it gets very overwhelming. And it kind of reminds me of something that I heard some professor told the students after a long semester, that every day we are learning more and more about less and less, and soon we'll know infinitely about nothing. And there has been an inflection point in AI. Like we've been tracking benchmarks for a very long time, and suddenly we saw like all the benchmarks crossing that line of human reasoning, right? It's a huge shift in the way we have looked at the world, we have done our work, historically. If we think of, technologies that have been this dramatic, like electricity. For 50 years in New York, they were still using gas lights because they didn't know what to do with electricity. Because there used to be a huge steam engine in the middle of the warehouse, and it's like you have to think different. Oh, I don't need to be in the warehouse to do my work. I can be in a room with a telephone and with electricity, send telegram messages and all that, and be able to do my work. So, but this is real. And the reason, I've been hearing so many different, things, right? The agentic AI, it won't last, et cetera, et cetera. The thing is, there are two main things I think that we need to be aware of. One is guardrails. Firstly, it takes effort. Anything of significance takes effort. So guardrails. So having the right guardrails in place to make sure your data, your results are grounded. Use multiple LLMs to vet your results, right? So use GPT-4o Mini for some quick answer, but then if it's that critical, use GPT as a judge to decide, okay, should I send it to GPT-5 or something else, right? So having the right guardrails in place. And secondly, evals. Evals are extremely critical, right? So it's not just about writing a prompt. Everybody can write a prompt, right? It's just typing in some English words. But doing the right evals is very essential. And that could involve like, prompt tuning, prompt optimization, like DSPY. You can do optimization on the prompt or fine-tuned LLMs. So like the AI research assistant product that we showed, that uses a fine-tuned LLM, and that's why you get grounded results, relevant results. So this stuff is real, and it takes work, but with the right guardrails, with the right evals, I think there's a lot of value to be had. And what happens next remains to be seen. So thank you for your time. That's all I wanted to share with you.